Hi, this is Dr. Kimberley Linert, author of Visualizing Happiness in Every Area of Your Life and host of this podcast, Incredible Life Creator. And today I have with me Pastor Darryl A. Thomas. Hey, Pastor Thomas.
Well, hello. How are you today?
I am awesome. So excited to get into this interview and hear your story. In fact, I heard a little bit of it last week
Yeah.
on a summit. So excited to get into that. But just so other people know who you are, I'm going to read your short bio.
Okay.
So, Pastor Darryl A. Thomas is known as King Lion, a highly influential figure with 32 years of full time ministry experience, complemented by a background as a former military officer, coach, motivator, teacher, real estate loan officer, trader, and serial entrepreneur. His diverse skill set and extensive experience enable him to inspire and empower others across various domains, whether it be through spiritual guidance, personal development, financial literacy, or entrepreneurial endeavors. Thomas is a beacon of positivity and resilience dedicated to uplifting individuals and fostering positive change in their lives. So I would like you to share your story with everybody because, like I said, I heard some of it the other day, and I'd just love for you to share it with everyone.
Wow. I was just listening to what you just got through saying. They did that for me. That's how they saw me. But nevertheless, well, I started years ago, probably after college. I was a little wild in college now. You know how that is, the fraternities and all of that. And one day I was in the reserves, military officer, field artillery. And I was also a social worker, but I was on my way one day to do something nefarious. And as I'm a product of the old hippie days. So I was going to do something and I didn't make it there. And it was amazing because at 15 minutes to 1 in a sunshiny day, I got born again. I got back in the car and a voice said, "You think you're born again, but when you get off work, you're going to go spend the night over here and you're going to get high over here." I screamed as loud as I could, "No!" And when I screamed, now watch this, at 15 minutes to 1, the car got supernaturally bright inside. And I began to smile. And as I smiled, I said, "Finally, I'm here, I'm back." And so I went back to my job, and everybody was saying, "What's wrong with you?" Just grinning, he just smiling. And I said, "I got born again." And now I was a good Baptist boy. I didn't know nothing about laying of hands. I didn't know nothing about being spirit filled, and nothing against Baptists. I'm just saying I didn't know. Okay. And so I was in my office, and I said, "Father, I don't know what you have, but I want you to give me whatever it takes for me to stay this way." Why did I say that? All of a sudden, it was like fire filled the office. My hair stood up on my arm and head, and I began to speak in a language. Now, it was not gibberish, but it was actually a language. And I had 4 years of French, and it definitely wasn't French. Okay. And so I came on my office looking wild, and they said, "What's wrong with you?" I said, "Come on, I gotta tell you something." And they said, "Man, you're filled with the Holy Spirit." I said, "Okay, what's that?" You know? So, in the meantime, most of my encounters have been personally with our Heavenly Father. I hadn't nothing in any line, no laying of hands, no praying for. I would just be on my way somewhere and it happens. So I when I did that, and let me tell you what was funny. I went to my college sweetheart, who we were unofficially engaged. But I was wild. And so I said, "I've already repented and confessed my sins to my father. Now I gotta confess my sins to her. If she leaves me, that's it. I don't know what I do." Well, when I told her everything, she got quiet for a minute. And she says, "You know, it took a real man to do what you just did. I'm not going anywhere. I'm gonna love you for now."
Wow.
Yes, 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 yes. So we of course, I proposed to her on the military floor as a formal dance.
Mhm.
My dress greens were so wet because I was nervous and but she said yes, and so it was wonderful.
Mhm.
So as time went on, she and I got in ministry together. Now she was raised Catholic, and we were married at a Catholic church, and we came together. And when we came together, it was just powerful because we loved being together. We was partners, buddies, friends. And so years later, now that happened in 85 all the way up, but in 2007, she came back. She was on a trip with her mother and aunts to Bermuda. And she said, baby, I found a knot on my breast. I said, okay. I said, we're going to take care of it. I wish I knew what I knew now, but I had limited knowledge, but enough to do the right things. And we took her to a naturopath, because she said, I am not going to have my breast cut off like my aunts. I'm
Mhm.
not going through what my aunts went through. I'm going to beat this with faith and proper nutrition.
Mhm.
And she beat it, but she had a rare case of glaucoma that accelerated in short time what most people do in years.
Mhm.
And so in fighting the fight, her immune system, everything was perfect. All her signs was perfect. But that in the middle of the week, she says, uh-oh. I said, what's the matter? She said, what if I had to give up something just to stay alive and be healed? I said, what's the matter? She said, I can't see a thing now. And me being an encourager, me being Superman, I said, baby, it's going to come back. We're going to do the right things because you got an orphanage named after you in Africa. We got a lot of things we're going to do. We got to go back to Egypt. We got to do all these things. She said, okay, baby. But that night, she says, instead of saying, I'm fighting a good fight of faith, that what she always has said, she said, wonderful Father, show me your face. And Thursday, all day, she just moaned and said, wonderful Father, show me your face.
Mhm.
Friday morning, she said, baby, my organs are shutting down. I said, no, they can't shut down. You're not going anywhere. She said, wonderful Father, show me your face. So we went up to my office / family room, and the elders came over, the naturopath, everybody came over, and they stayed there the whole day. We were praying and giving her flower essences and different things. And she sat there, and everybody left about 4:30. About 6:30, she said, baby, take me to the back. I said, why? She says, too many people up here. I said, nobody's up here but me and you. She said, okay, baby, thank you. And she laid over and fell in my arms and gave her last breath.
Mhm.
Woo! I fell on my knees. And I think this is what saved me, because I didn't get angry at our Father, but I looked up into the heavens and I said, I love you even more. And by that time, my sons and my mother-in-law had come up, and we were crying, and we just didn't know what to do. And so the coroner came around about maybe an hour or two later, and some of the elders came back over. And I was angry at the devil, but I was trying to figure it out, because I'm the one that always has the answers. I'm the man of faith. I fix things. I connect people with who they're supposed to be connected with. And I couldn't do anything about that. Mm. So anyway, uh, I uh, I had just done my mother's memorial 2 years before, and we had a ball. And then the 6 months later, I did my business partner and my last uncle's memorial. We had a ball. I refused to allow people to be sad and holler and scream and cry.
Mhm.
We just rejoiced, and we memorialized their life and
Mhm.
the things they did. And when I got through, a lady came up to me. She said, "When I die, will you do my funeral?" So I said, "No, man." I said, "You're gonna be all right." So I got married again about 14 months later. Nah, 10 months later. Beautiful woman. It was like in The Godfather, they say when the thunderbolt hits you and there's nothing you can do, the
Mhm.
thunderbolt hit me. And she was so much like my wife, my first wife. But I remember telling the Most High, please help me not to compare, but let me see her in her own merits and everything. But
Mhm.
she knew it, because she was a widow also. Her
Mhm.
husband had been killed violently, murdered. He was
Mhm.
a preacher. So anyway, so 5 months into the marriage, now I knew she was a cancer survivor, 16-year cancer survivor, double mastectomy. And we went out to Las Vegas, and she got sick out there. And I said, baby, you all right? And she said, I don't know. And I said, well, we're going to go back home. We got on an early flight, went back to Atlanta. She couldn't get off the plane. Got her in the hospital, and the doctor said, your wife is very ill. I said, what's the matter? She has an autoimmune disease. I said, well, what's going on? We can't treat her here. She has to go to Emory. So we got her to Emory, and they told me, said, Pastor Thomas, you might want to do one of those non-resuscitate forms because we've tried to resuscitate her twice and we brought her back, but we don't want to do it a third time because her lungs might, I mean, her ribs might break and puncture her lungs. Then we got another problem. So I called her, she's the only child. I called her first cousin. He's an only child in Minnesota. He's a psychologist. And he agreed with me. He said, Darryl, let her go. I said, okay. I called her son. He was there with me, her only son. And I said, Alvin, what do you want to do? This is what me and your uncle said. He said, I'm with y'all. I said, I don't want to see her suffer. She was a beautiful one. I don't want to see her suffer. Well, they said, Pastor Thomas, you can come back now. She's going. And I sat there and held her hand and watched that thing flatline. Woo! I ran back out into the little waiting room. We had a little private waiting room. And I fell on my knees and I said, Father, you have me. What more do you want? And that's all I could do. That's all I could do. And so I didn't do her or my first wife memorial. I couldn't do that because I love them. So as time went on, sometimes people are like vultures. They're looking for those that are weak and in a bad state. And I met this lady. She said she was a preacher. I didn't like younger women. My criteria, they had to be 1 year younger, up to 5 or 6 years older, because I didn't have time to teach and rebuild. I needed somebody who was focused and knew what they wanted and where they were going. Okay. This woman, she played that thing. She played me like a fiddle. And she knew. And she came in 5 months into marriage. I said, I saw somebody that had 7 personalities. And by me being in deliverance, we were, my family, we were in my ministry, we were strong deliverance. We had the Most High had a lot of successes through us. We didn't have success, he did. And I saw the spirit and I looked at her, I said, oh, I see you, but you're at Kingdom Life. That's that preacher pride now and that ministry pride raising up, and we got you. And so as time went on, oh God, all kind of things started happening. And it was just crazy. And so she left one day and I began to, she's supposed to be an accountant. I looked in her files and I saw all these men she used to talk about all the time. These men were ex-husbands. I was her 8th husband and she was still married to 3. And when I talked to those 3, they said, man, get her out of your house fast. Get her out fast. You don't know what you're in for. And so she left and she left the key. Called my daddy. He's an architect. I said, Dad, I said, I need you to go to the hardware store and get the strongest locks you can get and check all the locks on the house. I'm going to be gone. Look, he laughs about that. He said, Darryl told me to go get them locks and I got them. So instead of, she said that her uncle was coming to get her. She stayed in this town a whole year, going from small church to small church, telling them to pray for her husband, Apostle Darryl, because he had put her out. But she didn't know that one of her family members had told me. When I finally called up and talked to all these men, and all of them said the same thing, and her family member out of her own womb said, we wish we could have got to you before you married my mother, because she has a trail of destruction behind her. She destroys families and churches and ministries. So it was an assignment of the enemy to send her there, because we had a very productive ministry. We had drug ministry. People were getting set free. We had the leadership development school. They called us a leadership factory there. Okay. And we had the Project Impact juvenile diversion program with measurable results. Over 300 students came through there. They had counted out, and I'll say 95% of them are ministers now. One of them was on the honor guard with the president. We had, so you can't brag on and sit on your laurels of your past accomplishments. You have to start all over as if nothing. Like I did when I preached my first good sermon. I heard this preacher say, now, when you get through going to the bathroom, clean the toilet. So that's what I did. So anyway, my lawyers, they got her out. They said, well, you're not legally married because she has so many marriages. She's got social security numbers. She's got property in her name in different places. And she even has immigrant numbers.
Oh.
Had those. I don't know how she did it. So we got her out, but it's good to have a good name. And I worked hard. My biggest thrust of my ministry when we came over was integrity and character. I said, I'm in the word of faith. We charismaniacs. And I said, guess what? A lot of those pastors lie. They do all that bragging about what they do and their faith, and all of them got a good boy circle, and they just lying. So I don't care. We're not going to be those type of people. We're going to be pure, unadulterated people of integrity. So she was at one church and she got up and was talking about me. And this deacon got her. He said, ma'am, I don't know you, but the man you're describing is not Darryl Thomas that I know. Apostle Thomas, that's not him. So I don't want to hear nothing else you have to say. And you need to sit down. It's good to have a good name.
Mm-hmm.
And so after that, she got her out. Then my son, 3 a.m, he's coming home from college, stopped at a stop sign, texted his girlfriend to let her know he was at home. Out of the bushes came thugs, and they abducted him, robbed him, put a gun in his mouth, took him down to the southern part of the county at 3 a.m. He's standing on me, daddy, 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 they robbed me, they robbed me. And I get up. Now, I'm trying to tell you, Dr. Linert, I cried because that's my youngest son. And then also I had a vision. I have a lot of vision. And this vision, I saw myself go up to the person that did it, shoot him in the head, give my hands over to the police and the gun and say, you can take me in now. I've avenged my son. But the Most High took me out of that thought. And I'm so thankful. That was not my character anyway, but that was my baby boy. That was my son.
Mm-hmm.
And so he said, Daddy, they threw my keys in the bushes, but I praying so loud. I was praying so loud in the woods. They took off running and threw my keys, and I walked straight to my keys.
Wow.
Oh, thank you, Father. So he came home, and in the meantime, then I met my baby that I have now, Marsha. Marsha, she was a widow, but she prayed me through all of this because, man, anxiety, stress, that the lady that was operating as a witch had put so much problems in the church, planting so many seeds in our ministry. Successful ministry. We didn't have people going back and forth. There was a community, a home.
Mm-hmm.
And then it caused my oldest son, he was already hurt from his mother. And then I married this woman, and he was already hurt from my second marriage. And then I married this woman. This woman just tore up everything. He didn't speak to me for a year, Dr. Linert. And I'm trying to tell you, that almost healed me. I couldn't do nothing but cry all night. I slept 1 hour a night. I would just cry, Father, what's going on? What are you trying to show me? One time I was saying, why? Then I said, what are you doing? What are you trying to show me? What's going on? So then what happened next was when Marcia came into my life, Marcia and she was in deliverance ministry also, and she had also been in the Yoruba culture, which is African spiritualism. But she said 3 years before I met her, because I was studying biblical Hebrew, 3 years before I met her, she says she was riding home from church. She went to World Change with Pastor Dollar. She said she heard the Father's voice say, choose you this day who you're going to serve. She said, I serve the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And she said she started crying and had to pull off the road. And she said, here I am 3 years meeting you, a Torah scholar, a Torah teacher, one who understands that whole premise. And she said, can I study with you? I said, yeah. Well, here's 15 years later, we're married and still studying together. Because the night when I told her, she asked me, why do you call him by that name? Tell me more about the Torah. And I began to explain to her. She broke into tears. And she said, this is the truth that I've been looking for all my life. And she says, can I study with you? So we're still studying together. So now after all that happened, now we're at service. We of course we do the Sabbath on the seventh day. But we were doing the first day of the week at that time. And she normally sometimes would have to come back to the house 8 miles away, just if she forgot something. She didn't come that day, but when we got home, our house had been broken into. And I had over $50,000 in silver coins that had been stolen, among other things. But
Mhm.
the only thing I was really concerned about was my laptop with my pictures and all my Torah and my Bible notes in it.
Mhm.
Well, I drove through the neighborhood. Now, watch this. I drove through the neighborhood and I got to the other side of the town, where, there's a little crime in. And I saw this guy, and he had attended my ministry as a young boy. And I
Mhm.
said, man, somebody broke in my house. I said, be on the lookout for a red laptop. It's a Dell, because I said, I don't care about the rest, because those coins are worth 248,000. I was going to use them for
Wow.
my retirement. Okay. And so he said, yes, sir. Guess what? He was the one that broke in and stole them. The Most High took me straight to him, and he was the one that did it. And to this day, he lived a life of death and violence. And he was killed last year. They shot point blank in the head. And
Mhm.
there were people that knew he broke in. They said uh, that was his payment for what he did to Pastor Thomas, because Pastor Thomas has helped so many people in this town. Well, during that time, now my wife and I are herbalists, and we help people stay well. Woo! It was so much stress on me. I was like Superman on Sunday mornings,
Mhm.
and like Clark Kent with kryptonite in my lap at nighttime, just weak. And one of my doctor friends, he said, Darryl, you have chronic stress and acute stress. My cortisol level went out of whack. I began to gain weight. I was sleeping 1 hour a night, and I just cried all night. Why, Father? What's going on? Help me! Help me! And my wife, she prayed. She labored in prayer for me. She prayed for the people that did me wrong.
Mhm.
That's why I love her so much. She's so sweet. And then what happened then was uh, my last W-2. We had an exodus from the church where she had done what she did. And so hold on, they're doing something crazy here now. And so what happened was whew, all that happened. My last W-2, now I was well taken care of as a pastor, because I wasn't a pimp pastor.
Mhm.
We gave over 30% of everything that came in that ministry out to widows, orphans, United Way, hungry, other pastors, encouraging people, and the widows in our church and the older ladies in our church. And well, my last W-2 was $2,000 for that year. They knew that that was my only income, but it was what it was. I really learned how to operate in faith then, because I could only pray two prayers every morning. One prayer was, Father, I trust you. That's all I said. The second prayer was, Father, thank you for your daily bread of your word and the daily sustenance for keeping us. That's all I could pray.
Mhm.
Now, Dr. Kimberley, one day, my wife and I were at a low point, and we was crying, and we got a phone call. It was an older lady who had a prophetic gifting. She said, and she was, oh God, she also studies Torah, and she says, I want to tell you, everything's gonna be all right. Y'all are my children.
Mhm.
Don't. I know things are going bad with it, but y'all are gonna be all right.
Mhm.
And she said, they are looking for what you have. How about the next day? I had three pastors call me and say, I understand that you study from a Hebraic perspective. I
Mhm.
said, yes. Can you help me? I said,
Mhm.
woo. And so then another day, I was trying to figure it out. And the Holy Spirit said, go open your Bible. Now, watch this. I opened the Bible, didn't turn a page. And when I looked, it was where Job was being restored.
Mhm.
I began to cry and laugh at the same time. And so now here we are. Oh, then my brother, he before he passed, he asked me, he said, Big brother, I love you. I said, I love you too. And I kissed him on the jaw. He kissed me back on the jaw. And about a week later, he was gone.
Mhm.
And Dr. Leonard, part of my problem was I never really grieved fully. I didn't grieve for my mom, my uncle, my wives. I did it lasted for a long time. Then my brother, then all of a sudden one day, I just howled off in there. I was just screaming and crying, but it was release. There was some
Mhm.
healing in it. Because listen, after my second wife passed, I went to a Christian retreat up in Colorado, Marble Retreat. I'm my therapist. We had a great relationship. But guess what I did the whole 2 weeks I was there? Helped her keep a marriage together of a young couple whose ministry had destroyed their marriage. So I didn't get all that I should have gotten, but
Mhm.
I did give out to help them, and they're still married today. And I'm so
Mhm.
thankful. Living up there in Montana with them big old bears and things.
Mhm.
And so, so here in the day, Marsha and I, we walk this walk and we teach. And then I had called Dr. Breakthrough, Dr. Stan Harris. It was funny because when it happened, I told him way back, I said, he said, man of God, he said, your setback is a setup for a comeback. I held on to that word. And that was hope to me throughout those years that at
Mhm.
some point there would be a comeback.
Mhm.
Not for my sake, but to the glory of our Father. Okay. And so I called him not too long ago, about maybe 3 months ago, February, and I said, I'm going to start a podcast. I said, I have the release now. I said, it's going to be based on hearing people tell how they got out of dark places, from being a cave dweller to being back in his marvelous light.
Mhm.
I said, I'll start off with mine. I said, I want you to come on. I got so many people that have agreed. I probably have people all the way to next year that'll speak.
Mhm.
So, but anyway, so then that's when that place, the summit, that was, I call that my inaugural mission back into speaking.
Mhm.
And so here I am. So there's a lot of other things because we were without it. I had 2 cars paid for, luxury cars. The motor tore up in them, and I just sold them. The ministry was, I didn't have the people of the ministry except the core group, okay? And then we were taking care of the building and the land and the house that we have.
Mhm.
So I gave up everything for ministry, even
Mhm.
for what I'm doing now. And we had a little joke. I had a pastor, and he said, "What are you doing, man?" I said, "I'm standing by the window." He said, "What?" "I'm just seeing if a car come by so I can catch a ride."
Oh.
so, so, so we had that little joke. So now, things are turning around. Things are being restored, and they're being restored massively. And so I'm just happy. And so if you have any questions or anything to say, because I could really go on with a lot, but I know, so if you have any questions, you can ask me.
Well, first of all, I know several years ago I had a friend who was a Christian and she married a Jewish person. And so she learned all about the Jewish holidays and just the thinking from that standpoint. And she did a Bible study and would teach us those things. So why don't you share a little bit about the Torah, why you decided to study the Torah, and why would people want to do that, and what's the
Okay.
blessing you got from it?
Well, I'm glad you asked. Okay. Well, remember when I came off the streets in 1982 and I got born again?
Mhm.
Um, One of the social workers there, she was over her bookstore. She was a spirit-filled Presbyterian lady. Her husband was a judge. He and I had done things together with juveniles on the street. And I said, Mary, I said, I'm born again. I need a Bible because all I had was my little green Bible from the army. Okay.
Mhm.
And she said, Darryl, get you a Hebrew Greek study Bible by Spiro Zodhiates. That's how she taught. And I said, okay. So I did exactly what she said. I began to look, I began to read, and I began to compare because she said the Hebrew was the language of creation. And that
Mhm.
was the very first language. It was actually started off as a pictograph language with pictures. That's
Mhm.
why it's so expansive. You'll see a diagram in it and you want to know what it means. It may mean spirit because it looks like water flowing. Okay.
Mhm.
And so they knew what they meant and they knew how to talk that. So I started matching the Hebrew lexicon, the Greek lexicon with Webster. And I went back to 1960 something. I said, Houston, we got a problem. you know, they're not matching. And being military, I know that one tick of the compass, if you follow the direction of that tick, and here's zero at the top, and that tick is going off, you may end up when you get miles away. So
Mhm.
just a little change in translation could take us so far away from the actual truth of what was saying, what was being said.
Mhm.
So I back then they had the PTL club and TBN and all that, and there was this guy named Zola Levitz. He was a Messianic Jewish teacher. So
Mhm.
I began to listen to him. And let me say this before I forget it, because sometimes, even though you said Jewish holidays, when you go back and read Leviticus, he said these are my feasts, these are my appointments. So they were not Jewish at all. Okay. And so anyway, so what happened? I would tell my pastor, I said, I'm listening to this guy. I can't refute anything he's saying, but it's not what we study, because we study more of a Greco-Roman Western type, and that's an Eastern culture. So then I just began studying and studying, and I said, Father, I just want to know you. I want to know you. It's not being this or being that. I want to know you, because I saw the faith that the patriarchs and the apostles had. I want to walk in there, not so we can lift up Darryl, but so that your will be done. That's
Mhm.
that's all I cared about. Because like my Hebrew name that he gave me is Obadiah, which means servant of Yahuwah, servant of Yah. Okay.
Mhm.
And that's all I'd ever done was serve. I didn't want to lead, but I was thrust into leadership because that was my call. From the time I was 17, that's all I've ever done is lead, class president, high IQ, lead the school, lead this, teach this. I could be in a service somewhere, and whoever's ministering, you remember Cindy Jacobs?
Mhm.
Okay, she was part of the apostolic prayer movement with Peter Wagner out there. I'm sitting in the thing, and I'm sitting in the bed, and she said, Sir, you brother, can you please come up here and pray over the body? She didn't know me, but she saw what was in me. She could discern what was in me. And I prayed over it. Was a regional meeting of apostles in Birmingham, Alabama. All cultures, everybody was there. And so I prayed. And she had me to stand up there with her. And so I said, okay, here I am again. My leaders, my elders and my deacons, they will always say, no matter where he goes, they're going to still point him out and bring him to the forefront, even if he's hiding behind a pole.
Mhm.
That was always. So I resigned and stopped fighting. I said, this is my call. This is what you call me to do. It's something that you want me to do. Because even the head of the Baptist Assembly, Southern Baptist now, in our town, told he said, anybody can bring the people, the races, the people together in Talladega. It'll be Pastor Thomas,
Mhm.
because our ministry was always blended. We didn't
Mhm.
advertise, we didn't do it. They just show up and we teach, and they go out and get more people. And I just teach. I was not a hollerer, I was not a hooper. I taught, and I did illustrations. I wanted you to be able to have what you have and walk in it and not just talk about it, but
Mhm.
be about it. Okay. And so then coming up around 2006, all those years I was studying, then Zola died. And in 2006, one of my friends who was in the prophetic movement also, and she's a doctor of biofeedback, she said, Pastor Darryl, Pastor Darryl, Pastor Darryl. I said, what? Pastor Darryl, Pastor Darryl. Oh, this year, Pastor Darryl. I said, tell me. And she told her son, you tell him, Corey. He said, Pastor Darryl, Pastor Darryl. And so, that pastor pride rose up in me, that pomposity. And I said, yes, this has been a powerful year for us too. I had no idea that they were actually doing the appointed times, the 7 feasts that are in Leviticus, and it had fulfilled them so much. And they were Pentecostal, but
Mhm.
they were so fulfilled. And so I started studying. Me and my first wife, before she passed, we started studying. And then Norm France, who's a messianic economist, because I had always been in the market, and he wrote a book, Money and Wealth in the New Millennium. He had been a international investment broker, but what he did, he's so accurate in his prophecies. So he was there. I had him there to speak, and he gave me all his library, and I started studying. And he said, "You do know that he said we're going back to the Hebrew roots of Christianity. Well,
Mhm.
Christianity didn't have Hebrew roots, Actually, it was the people of Israel, the Hebrews, were hijacked because you remember the Inquisition, the Great Inquisition, where they went and was forcing people to accept Christianity.
Mhm.
Or a lot of those people that they were forced were people who were still keeping the Sabbath and still obeying the scripture even before it was even written. You see
Mhm.
what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And so, no, y'all gonna come and do what we tell you to do. And
Mhm.
so they were burned at the stake, put in the lion's den, all kind of stuff. So I started studying. The Bible was my basic, okay, and then I would history,
Mhm.
anthropology, archaeology,
Mhm.
uh, genetics. See what else is that? Linguistics,
Mhm.
the oral tradition history of Yoruba and Igbo elders. I listened to them, and then the Library of Congress, the Smithsonian Library, the Cambridge Library, the Harvard Library, the Oxford Library. I found writings of European who were writing about what happened. And I said, oh my, oh my. And I would always go back and look at the maps prior to 1700. And I could see so much. It was so much on there. And so I said, you know what? And oh, yeah, it was about 8 of us apostles. All of us were lead pastors in our churches, in our districts. And we came together. And for 5 years, from 9 to 2, every Wednesday, we studied Torah together.
Mhm.
And we start seeing a movement in the United States of people returning to the Hebraic model. And we resigned to say, we believe that the Most High had chosen us to bring this into North Alabama. Because we had 40 something pastors coming to see what we were studying and
Wow.
just being amazed at the truths and the differences. Because now let's do this. I know it's getting close. I did a test in the ministry one day, one Sunday. I went over to the last person on the left side and I whispered in their ear, Red Dog. By the
Uh-huh.
time it went through the church and got over there, we had a blue bird or something. I said, now, if we lost translation in just this room, think about the word and the language over millennia, how we could lose, uh, uh, translation.
Mhm.
And so that caused me to continue to study. And then when my second wife passed, I had an herb store, and I was just lonely. So I signed up for Biblical Hebrew, and I was staying there at night with my teacher in Israel and just studying. And I said again, when I started reading, I said, Houston, we got a problem
Mhm.
because now I can understand the Bible's making more sense now. Because I had always debated scholars, Kemet people, Egyptian people, Muslims, atheists, and they would always say the Bible contradicts itself. Well, if you read it from a Western mindset, it will always look like it contradicts itself. That's why they call Paul a schizophrenic. Say he's saying one thing one minute, saying another thing. So
Uh-huh.
I began to study the culture of the people of that day. I began to study the language. I began to all the way back to the Latin Vulgate, all the way back to uh, all the way back, just different translations. And oh, I forgot to tell you this. And then uh, after Marcia and I got together, I get excited now. Um, I had a teacher in Israel. His name was Avram Yahashua. He started out at Oral Roberts years ago,
Mhm.
but he woke up to the Bible, the Torah, and Billy Joe Dart and all of them. They didn't want that out there, and so there was a group in Tulsa that he began to teach, and the Most High called him to Israel. So he was in Israel, bringing people to the Messiah.
Mhm.
His wife. And when I met him, he about a year after I met him, I was studying what his lessons. He calls and says we don't have anywhere to stay. They had put him in jail for for proselyting, and when they got out, he and his wife stayed with me and my wife for 2.5 weeks. Dr. Kimberley, we studied the scriptures so much that I think I was getting constipated. I said, in the word. I said, can't we just worship And then there was a verse in Matthew that had me confused about baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. But yet over here, Peter says baptizing them in the Son's name. And
Mhm.
when you study, it wasn't necessarily a miraculous thing that happened. You baptized under the person that taught you, that you were a student of that person. So that's why they said John's baptism. You see,
Uh-huh.
John, he put it. I said, no, that's the one that's going to do it.
Uh-huh.
And so I began to study it that way. And so when I asked him, he said, he put his head down. He said that verse in Matthew was not in the earlier manuscripts. So a lot of times the translators thought they could help
Uh-huh.
by adding something to make it seem like it's clearer,
Mhm.
or other things, they intentionally changed some things to go along with the doctrine that they were under. And I'll
Mhm.
just stop right there. I'm not going to get into that
So
because that
which verse are you referring to that was not there in the original?
uh, in Matthew, let me see, Matthew, where it says, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Now, when you look at the word name, the word name means the essence of a person, the character, the reputation, the authority. So
Mm.
when you say in the name, what's their what's about them? What kind of character they have? What's the essence of that person? What type of authority they walk in? So a lot of people think it's the actual name, but the
Uh-huh.
name must describe the character of that person.
Mm.
So it's in the name of the Father. Well, 6,800 times they took his name out and put God. Okay.
Mhm.
And when you look up the word God, it's a Germanic word. And it means it's actually a label of a deity.
Mm.
So that's why he said, thou shalt have no other gods before me and not take my name in vain, because do not take my character, my essence, and my authority in vain, or belittle it or lessen it, devalue it. So when we call him anything other than his name, it devalues who he is. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So when you
Okay.
baptize, in which name should we
That's
baptize?
what, hey, that's one of the biggest fights in the church. Jesus only, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, Father only. Listen, we follow, his son said, follow him as he obeyed his father. We're to follow him. He was a powerful example of how to walk the Torah out. And Torah does not mean Old Testament, it does not mean laws. The pure thing, the pure definition of the word Torah means it's from the root word yara, which means to hit the target,
Mm.
to cast a stone, to make sure you hit the target. So when we look at that being that way, that means this has to be important. And it has to be important because look at all the genealogies he named everybody. You see what I'm saying? So
Mhm.
name's important. So I don't want to call him something that he's not. I want to honor him. Just like, all right, we were taught well, I don't know how old you, but we were taught to honor our elders. Okay.
Mhm.
And it's Mr., Mrs., Sir, ma'am.
Mhm.
All right. So, what does it look like me going up to Miss Rosa? She's 80 some years old. I said, "What's up, girl?" That's so disrespectful.
Mhm.
So, how do you think he feels when we say the big man upstairs, God, all of that? It hurts him because he wants us to release his essence into the atmosphere around us.
Mhm.
So, when I say Yahuwah,
Mhm.
the self-existent one that breathes life, what did he do to Adam and Eve? He breathed into them and they became a living soul.
Mhm.
Breath, spirit, breath. And so that's who he is. So when I say Yahuwah, the whole room fills up with his presence.
Mhm.
That's why in 15 years of praying, because I remember one night I taught on that, and we had about 25 people on the prayer call that night, all cultures. And
Mhm.
I taught on that. And everybody had a prayer request, and we prayed. After the call, 5 minutes after, Pastor, my prayer is answered. That happened all the way until the last person Saturday morning, from Wednesday to Saturday morning. Every last one of their prayers was answered. Now you know how long we used to pray sometime trying to get a breakthrough and all of
Mhm.
that. And I said, "What's the difference?" I recognized him. I called him by his name. I called his son by who he is instead of a name that has no etymology. Now, I'm not knocking nobody. That's how we were taught. But when you
Mhm.
look up the etymology of the J word, it says it is a transliteration of Jesus,
Mhm.
Greek translation of Jesus, Latin,
Uh-huh.
a transliteration, because transliteration is not a translation. We don't know what the translation is. There's no translation. So this is what we're going to say. Okay.
Uh-huh.
And it's a transliteration of it was, well, some books say Yahashua, and some say Yahusha, and some say Yeshua. Okay, it depends on who's writing it. But we do know that that name was the name that his mother and father gave him, and we knew that's the name because if we could go back in the past and say, "Hey, Jesus," nobody he ignored me. He don't know who you're talking to,
Mhm.
but by his anointing, he would probably turn around and say, I know what you're trying to do, but that's not my name.
Mm.
Because he's just wonderful. Yeah. And so a lot of people think that the word Torah means law, but it's teachings, instructions, and directions to hit that target.
Mhm.
And also there's the law inside it because every kingdom has to have a constitution and bylaw. So we to work without parameters is anarchy. So we had to have those commandments, and those commandments are eternal, even though we were taught that they done away with, but I can't find where they are done away with. And the
Mhm.
first thing that happens, they list Paul. And I said, wait a minute. So you telling me that what Paul says trumps our father and trumps his son? They never said that. So
Mhm.
why are you gonna blame it on Paul? So that's how it went. So I since we started what we have such a great shalom, a great peace. Um, there's no argument, there's no debating. We don't argue with people, we don't debate. I know you see a lot of people on the streets fussing and cussing folks out, but the Pentecostals used to do that in a different way back in the day when we us Baptists were back. Look at them. They think they say, everybody and see because there's a way that seems right unto a man.
Mhm.
Everybody, we have 60 something thousand denominations, and every last one of them say they're right.
Mhm. No.
Some stinking in Denmark.
Yeah, there's something not right, but it also says to work out your own salvation. It's like, hey, I
Yes.
mean, I actually there's a little church near me that's a Southern Baptist church, and I go there with my daughter. And then
Uh-huh.
some Sundays I go to this other little church that's Pentecostal holiness. So, one church I put on my makeup and dress up, the other church no makeup, no jewelry, and the Baptist church, we just sit there and we don't even hardly clap, we just
I
sit there
know, I
real
know.
all quiet, and then the Pentecostal church, they're all screaming and yelling and talking back at the pastor. I mean, it's just
Hey, listen, my wife was Catholic. She was raised Catholic at St. Jude in Montgomery. We were so fired up after we got born again.
Mhm,
We were so fired up that we go to mass at 7 o'clock.
mhm.
Then we go to Baptist Sunday School at 9 and 8:11. And then that night at 6 o'clock, we find one of those churches, a little hardcore holiness church. We come out there at 12 or 1 o'clock at night, hands rough and clapping,
Uh-huh.
running around the church, shouting. But we wanted him. We
Mhm,
wanted him. So we thought we were doing right. And I mean, it was probably right for us at that moment
mhm,
because it kept us from going back out in the streets, you know? And
mhm,
so now I just teach the purity of the Bible. No, the doctrine of the Bible is what it is. There's one thing my teacher told me, Avram told me, he said, let the Bible just speak. Don't
mhm.
try to spiritualize and tell what you think it means. Yeah, I don't know if y'all did that when we were little. We'd be in Sunday school and everybody read a verse. Now tell me what you think that means. Everybody made up something.
Mhm.
Boy, if there had been a Korean in there that hearing the Bible for the first time, he'd been totally confused.
Yeah.
So so anyway, so now that's what I teach. I don't argue with people. I don't debate. I just live it out. And I'm so fulfilled. 30 something years of being a full-time spirit-filled Christian pastor, trying to bring the kingdom, the people together.
Mhm.
That was I was always trying to bring the people together as a nation or community. And everybody's concerned about their own church, concerned about their own empire, their own car, their own house, their own numbers. What you running, Doc? How many you running now? I said, I'm not chasing any of them. I would tell them that. And so I'm more kingdom minded because the kingdom is within us. It's the rule and the domain of our Father. And so whatever he says do, that's what I do. Whatever he says don't do, I don't do.
Mhm.
Am I perfect? No. But guess what? I can that I know to do, I'm gonna do. You know,
Mhm.
boy, I tell you, it's so much. And but since we've been this way, it has been utter bliss. We don't have the questions that we used to have.
Mhm.
Now we may have doctrinal questions, and then we study it out. We go to the Hebrew lexicon, the Greek lexicon. We'll go back to earlier translations and look at things, and we'll compare things, and we say, okay, all right. Now, let me give you an example. Okay, a lot of the Jewish people, they migrated to Israel probably the most of them got there in 48, but some of them came in the 8th century, and they were converted into what they called Judaism. It wasn't Judaism, but it was just the obedience of our Father and the culture of the early biblical people. I'll call it that way. And so we as we began to look at that and look at the culture and study that, it's just it's amazing how everything comes together now. And you have a USA moment. USA.
Mhm.
That's what that means. So I'll give you an example. That's what I was getting ready to do. In seminary, they may say that Paul was a tent maker. Okay.
Mhm.
And that was his profession. Okay. That's a Western mindset. So one day in our congregation, I had everybody close their eyes. I said, I'm going to say something. I want you to tell me what you saw in your mind. And I said, close your eyes. I said, tent. So when they started telling me, I had teepees, pup tents, Boy Scout tents, Girl Scout tents, GP medium, GP small, military tents, camping tents. Everybody had a different tent. And,
Mhm.
and one lady, she said, Pastor, I don't see nothing. I said, all right. And so I said, now look what we all saw. So we need to find the culture of the Bible and find out what it means. So when we go back to that word tent and you look up, they wore something, a garment, and it was called a talit. We call it a prayer shawl, but I
Mhm.
think it's caftan or something like that. And it had fringes on it. These fringes are supposed to be representative of the commandments or the statutes. Okay.
Mhm.
So if you look up talit, guess what the definition of talit is? Now, Paul was a rabbi. He was a Pharisee. What in the world does he look like making a tent when they made tents of animal skins?
Mhm.
Guess what talit means? A little tent.
Oh.
That's the literal translation. Little tent, a place to pray under, a place
Mhm.
to get away from the world. So he was a tent maker. He made the garments for the other Pharisees. He did that. So I know going to be some people say, he don't know what he's talking about. I don't care.
Mhm.
I studied to show myself approved, and I'm going to continue. I'm a forever student of the Bible, and I have to, because I've seen people fight. I've seen churches break up. I've seen pastors get dogged out. I've seen pastors dog people out, and that's not the way of our Father. That's not the way. So that's just me. I'm a truth seeker, and I still seek for the truth. Yeah. So that's how I got in there. Oh, and in the Hebraic, a teacher is called a moreh. Moreh comes from that same root word yara, and moreh is the picture of a loving father pointing his children in the right direction
Mhm.
toward the Torah, lovingly, not with a whip, not chasing them, but lovingly point.
Mhm.
So that's why I love it. It's so beautiful.
Mhm.
Yes.
That's a beautiful picture. It puts a beautiful picture in my mind.
Yeah, because a lot of people try to say, this mean God, why would he do all this? Well, think about you and your children. You love your children so much that you would punish them to keep them from getting into trouble.
Mhm.
If they got in trouble, just like your mother told you, don't you go off that porch because cars are out there in the street, all right? and you go off the porch. She said, come back, and she punishes you. You think she's the meanest person in the world because she punished you. But guess what happened? You broke her trust. You
Mhm.
broke her commandments. And so there's a consequence. You remember that movie? They said there will be consequences and repercussions.
Oh,
Okay. So there's a consequence when you disobey the Father.
mhm.
It's because he loves you. He says, if you obey these commandments, all these blessings will come on you. But if you disobey these, all these curses will come on you. So was it him that did it, or was it your disobedience?
Mhm.
Yeah. So,
That's a great point.
yeah. So I,
So,
that's what I do. And you better put a chain on me, because my wife says when he opens up that bell, he'll be all night talking. And in the morning, he'll be saying, y'all ready to go to sleep?
uh-huh. All right. Well, at this point, I'm sure there's people who would love to connect with you. How is the best way to connect with you?
Oh, well, they can connect with me with my email, which is info@kinglionpi.com. Now, can I tell you how I got the name King Lion?
Mhm.
My wife, when we met, my wife that I have now, she said, I see so much royalty in you and so much strength in you. She said, you're my King Lion. And she bought me a little cane with a lion's head, right?
Uh-huh.
Now, that same week, nobody knew she called me that. But my nephew wanted to come up and give a praise report. Uncle Darryl, can I give a praise report? You know, we packed up, and I said, yeah, come on. I let the children always, do things like
Mhm.
that. And he got up there and started singing this blues song. I said, how's that a praise report? And his daddy said, that's my ringtone for his mother. And so then his mother said, he woke up this morning crying. And I said, well, what was wrong with him? He said he wanted King Lion. And she asked him, who is King Lion? He said, Uncle Darryl.
Uh-huh.
So I had to keep that name. I had to keep
Mhm.
that. That's my brand, King Lion. Why? Because it was confirmed. The Bible said, let everything be confirmed in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses. My
Mhm.
wife gave me that name, and he knew nothing about it, but he had a dream and woke up wanting King Lion. So that's how. And then we're the Lion of the tribe of Judah, and so
Mhm.
it is what it is. Yeah.
That's beautiful. So now I have a personal question for you.
Yes.
What gives you the most happiness and fulfillment in your life at this point?
Oh man, having peace,
Mhm.
especially after going through all those years of what that was a bunch of years I went through there.
Mhm.
And it was terrible. I don't wish it on anybody, but yet the result of who I am now, I love.
Mhm.
Uh, no more depression and anxiety, no
Mhm.
more grief. I understand things now. Like my father, he's 93. He'll be 94 next month. Well, of course the thought comes to your head, but I asked the Most High, I said, please let me and my daddy get past 100s, in our
Mhm.
hundreds. Because grandma, she would have still probably been here, but at age 95, she had cancer and didn't know she had cancer, and they had gotten it out of her.
Mhm.
And she was getting ready to make a trip to New York to visit my oldest uncle. And he said, Mama, what about your cancer? And she said, what cancer? And she looked at the youngest son, the one that I memorialized, and he started crying. 2 months later, grandma was gone. She gave up the will to live, because they think the C is a death sentence, but it's not a death sentence.
Mhm.
You can, I mean, it can be beat. It
Mhm.
can be. Genesis 1:29. He gave us every seed bearing plant, and it was to be food for us. And then when you go over into the book of Jubilees, which is called the Lesser Genesis, which is part of the apocryphal books that they took out,
Mhm.
uh, it says that uh, the watcher angels brought the plants to Noah and taught him all the healing plants to help get the sin and disease off the people. And Noah taught it to his son Shem,
Mhm.
and we're of Shem's line, Abraham's seed. And that's how the herbal thing went all. You see it in Africa, you'll see it in the United States, you see it in Native Americans. The herbal remedies go to the source. The chemicals treat a symptom and give you a side effects until that doesn't work. Then they give you another until that doesn't work, till it just tears your body down.
Mhm.
And so that's our belief. And we've lived that way. and we've walked it out, so we know. So I think about my dad, and I don't want him to go, but I would probably cry like a baby if he went, because that's my dad.
Mhm.
But yet I'm preparing for the day because he's lived a good life.
Mhm.
His wife that he has now, he married 6 months before I married, because mom died in his arms. Did you hear that? And so this, and mom just didn't want to go anywhere. She just worked, had a daycare and all that. This mom, they travel, they go everywhere. They like two teenagers. I said, there you go again. And but we're happy for him because she's made him happy. In his
Mhm.
latter days, he's done all the things that he wanted to do. He was in the Air Force. When we got to Alabama, life changed. It was just terrible. It was, we're back down into extreme racism,
Mhm.
crosses burned in your yard, and the Klan wanting to kill my uncles and all kind of stuff. Because I come from a line of entrepreneurs. We had the first black gas station. We had
Mhm.
the first black newspaper. We had the first black water franchise, bottled water franchise. So we just, that's what we did. Wait, and my uncle in New York, he had about 8 restaurants up there. And my aunt, the only girl in the family, she had a daycare. But guess what one of my uncles did? He was a businessman too. He was a bootlegger. So he was a successful bootlegger. So it's just it's investing in business, entrepreneurship. It's just in
Mhm.
us, and it's in our DNA. So that's where I am. And so I get my greatest joy, and the greatest thing I got of everything is finally have what they call shalom. Shalom is not just in the absence of chaos. Shalom is a broad word meaning balance, prosperity, everything that could go along with you being in right standing. So if I say shalom to you, I'm not just saying hello, but I'm releasing all that he has in your life to be activated. Yes. Ooh, I'm getting
Wonderful.
happy.
I
Getting
love
happy.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast today and all your stories. You're a great storyteller. Thank you.
Thank you. I got so many stories. It's so funny. One day I have to tell you about going through the Klan training camp up in Cullman, Alabama. I was the first black officer to go to that unit, and it was something. It was a sundown town. You know what a sundown town?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Okay, that's what it was. And so yes, I was sundown too.
Wow. Wow.
So maybe we can talk again when I have you on my podcast. We can talk a lot about a lot of stuff because I want to hear your story.
All right. That would be great. So I have one last question before we complete.
Yes.
What is your best advice on living an incredible, amazing life?
Seek ye first the king's domain of our Father and Creator and his way of doing things. And everything you have that you need is right there for you. Matthew
Beautiful.
6:33.
Hmm.
I expanded on it. See, I didn't just do it
Uh-huh.
the Western way. I expanded it so you can literally see a picture of it. And it now has more meaning. Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect.
Hallelujah.
Thank you so
Hallelujah.
much, Pastor Darrell. We'll talk to you again soon.
Well, I enjoyed it, Dr. Kimberley Linert. This has been wonderful. And I thank you for having me on your podcast.